Okay, so hello and welcome to this recorded discussion. I'm Heather Pasero, and I'm the Employability Practitioner for Postgraduate Taught programs at Winchester School of Art. And today I'll be chairing a panel comprising of Winchester School of Art Fashion Department academic staff, a graduate, and one of our current students who've all got their own story to tell of working in the fashion industry and indeed unique perspectives on the current influencing factors and how this will directly and impact the sector as we reflect and move forward in the pandemic. And I'm going to ask the panels to introduce themselves, and you may type any questions you have for them via the chat function. Please say if the question is for a particular panelist. Okay, so if I can please ask our panel to introduce yourselves. Could we start with Paul?
Hello, I think I remember to turn my microphone on. Welcome everybody. I'm Paul Mackie. I'm currently the program leader for MA Fashion Management here at WSA. Prior to joining WSA, I worked in the industry for around 16 years, just a tad over 16 years, on both sides of the fence in head office roles. So I was a merchandiser to start with in my career, and then crossed over to the other side, if you like, to be a buyer and senior buyer for the second half of my career in fashion. I've worked for various companies, small and large. I started in Arcadia. I've worked for department stores such as Debenhams. Also worked for lifestyle brands, Fat Face, you might have heard of that. And then towards the end, Kingfisher and B&Q, where I bought homeware product, which shouldn't be overlooked actually in terms of fashion, not traditional, but a very similar process. So that's me, and welcome.
Fabulous, thank you. And Bethany, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Beth, and I graduated from WSA in 2019 with a knitwear for fashion degree, and I am now working at M&S. I've just finished the graduate scheme there, and I'm working as an assistant designer on the women's wear knitwear team. And I also have, well, basically all my experiences at M&S. I did an internship there, and I'm now on the graduate scheme, so that's all my experience.
Thank you, that's great. And Delia?
Put my microphone on as well. Hi everybody, hi there. Yeah, I'm Delia Crowe. I'm the programme leader for MA Fashion Design here at Winchester School of Art, and I have a similar background to Paul actually. So I worked as a fashion designer my whole career actually, up until eight or 9 years ago when I started teaching. But yes, I worked in for high street brands. I started as a kind of buying assistant actually, and then realized that I just had to be in design. I had to be a designer. So after a couple of years out of university, I have been a designer my entire career, which has been absolutely brilliant. So yeah, for kind of high street brands generally. And that involved lots of travel and yeah, lots and lots of good times, very exciting and interesting. So and yeah, I've been at Winchester School of Art for about 10 years now, I think. So
okay, thank you so much. And Eva?
Hi, I'm Eva. I am a current fashion marketing and management student. I'm currently on my placement year, so I'm yet to graduate. But I am the PR and comms assistant currently at Bottega Veneta's press office in London. So I started nearly 8 months ago now, and then I'll rejoin university back in September. But previously, before joining Bottega, I've interned in other roles within luxury, like at Tom Ford and Galvan London.
Fantastic, what a great panel. So I sent some questions around before this panel, and there was a question that everyone wanted to be asked, actually. So I thought I'd start with it, and it's a great opening question, I think, to kind of give an insight into your highlights. So I'll start with Eva. I've just spoken to you. What has been the standout experience of you working in fashion?
I think for my time at Bottega, there's been quite a lot of standout experiences because it's a brand that I've like loved for like quite a long time. But definitely for me, working within the press office is when like special covers or special shoots that come out and you see them like in person, like if you go to like a newsagent's or a newsstand and you see like work that you've worked towards actually there, it really pays off, because especially with how like competitive and like crazy the fashion industry is in general, sometimes it's really hard and it gets you down, but when you see times like that, it really pays it off, and like I understand like why I want to work in this industry now. And I think as well, even though I know we're going to speak more about COVID in a few minutes, but for myself working this whole like 7 months so far, obviously Fashion Week went on like digitally and things like that back in September and obviously this February, but definitely like being at our like digital show and working like towards things like that was such a like exciting time that I've never like experienced anything like that before. So yeah, that's definitely my standout moment.
Great, that really brings to life your experience,
Yeah.
really illuminates the reward. Okay, fantastic. And Delia, what's the highlight, the standout experience of your career working in fashion?
Okay, so I think that there's probably the travel, actually. That's probably the highlight. I think that having, and I'm sure Paul will have a similar experience, but yeah, having worked for years and years at kind of big high street, chains, at head offices, so for example, Marks and Spencer's was one of the first sort of big places I worked, and we used to travel a lot for work. So we would go to China and India twice a year to work with factories. So, I would be in at a table in a factory, sort of quickly drawing and pass them over. And, you're working directly with the companies. You can see where things are being made. So, in China, it's very sort of clean and sort of technology driven. In India, it's like these kind of guys sitting on the floor doing handwork, and it's such an incredible experience, sort of being there and working there. But the other thing is we would always travel for research. So you'd be going to New York and LA and all these places to see what was in the shops, what people were wearing, and just to really take in the atmosphere. And actually, all of that started really before. I mean, when I worked at M&S, I didn't have a computer. We didn't work like that. Everything was, pencil and paper, because I'm quite old. And so it would be, going to Paris and you'd sort of say, oh, I'm going to try something on, and you'd sort of take it into a changing room and sketch some details and maybe measure it, maybe try it on. And it was a bit like being a spy as well. But, taking all those things on and, going to, I did a trip to Saint-Tropez once, which was just completely surreal, staying on one side and getting a boat in the morning across to the beach to kind of go and, do our research, and thinking, oh my God, I'm at work. This is just unbelievable. So, I mean, it was hard work. We did a lot of traveling, and you would be working, you'd be in a lovely hotel, but you'd be working at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. You'd be working the Saturday. You'd work every day you were there, and it was hard. But it was really fantastically enjoyable at the same time. So I'd say that was definitely a highlight.
Oh, this sounds incredible. We're all very jealous indeed. And Paul, your standout moment.
Yeah, very similar to Delia. So I want maybe go over some of that as well, because it's very similar. I think overall for me, I think it's the variety of experiences, as Delia touched on with the travel. So I think from one minute you could be in the office on a Monday morning early, unpacking samples, boxes, getting your sleeves rolled up, taking out things, unpacking them from the factories. You might be presenting to the board of the company in the afternoon to sell your range or sell your ideas. Later in that week, you might be meeting with a supplier. We worked with a lot of designers in homeware. We would work with some designers, probably less fashionable now, but Kelly Hoppen we worked with, Sophie Conran. So you're in their studios, in their house. Sometimes you're invited to their house for dinner and for lunch. And then we worked through and we built ranges together. And then on the plane, jetting off somewhere. So although it sounds glamorous, as Delia said, it is partly, but it is also hard work. So I think my first trip, it was to Hong Kong. And I was a junior buyer at the time in my buyer said to me, Paul, do you want to go to China? I can't do it. Can you go on Friday? This was on like the Tuesday. So I was like, fabulous. And at the time, I worked for a company that was very good to us. And they picked us up in a fancy car. They took us to Heathrow. It was Virgin first class. I was in the lounge. I thought it was great, drinking the champagne. But actually then landed in Hong Kong, was off the plane, and was in the factory 2 or 3 hours later. So it was the glamorous part of the lifestyle. But actually the reality is it's super hard work. As Delia said, they expect a lot from you. They look after you a lot, but they'll expect a lot from you. But for me, it was the variety. It was the unpacking boxes, just sitting there having dinner with somebody.
That gives us a great insight, a really great insight. And I suppose we'll talk about pandemic and Brexit a little bit later and wonder how those things will impact the industry in the future. And Bethany, what's been the standout moment at M&S?
I would say, so I started in September and we work on a kind of year-long time frame. So we started designing this September 2020 when I just started in 2019. And one of the first things I designed, I think it was like the tech pack code was something like 19 or something. And that was the first thing that I was really kind of in charge of designing that was my very own and wasn't prescribed to me by my designer. And I was really proud of it. And it somehow got through, it got into the range, and then it got selected for a campaign. And then it got selected to be shot on Holly Willoughby. So one of the first things that I had produced into a store, and then it was an all-store line, got like 243 stores. It was on, like all the shop decor. There was, massive big posters with my jumper on it, and it was just so surreal. And it's just because it's such a big company, you do one piece of work and it can go so far. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling.
Well, thank you so much for that, because those type of stories from you, Eva, and Bethany, it's a great motivator for students, and kind of as they look towards the future, an insight into what the industry is like and the rewards it can bring. So I'm going to ask another question. I think, Eva, you wanted this in particular to be asked, which I thought was particularly brave. What has the biggest challenge been of working in the fashion industry during COVID restrictions?
So since starting I started back in July, so when we were kind of easing out of the first lockdown. So at the start of my time at Bottega, I was like incredibly lucky. I have like many other friends that have been doing their placements this year, and they've just been working at home the whole time. My family have all been working at home for their like jobs, like most of the country. But I was incredibly lucky. I worked like 5 days a week, so it really, even though our office is small, there's a small team, I really got to know everyone on a personal level, which I like really appreciated, considering a lot of other people didn't, like in 2020. But saying that, now since November, I've basically been working at home 4 days a week, and then 1 day in the office, which has brought a lot of challenges and like a lot of struggles. So I spend literally 90% of my time in our showroom, organising like sample management and sending things to shoots like all around the world. So having to now only have 1 day in the office and having to coordinate with like stylists and publications that like we're trying to share these looks, but I can only send them out 1 day, has been like really extreme. But at the same time, taking positives out of that, I think it's really helps like my time management skills, like incredibly, like even more than like I did at the start of my placement, like my organisation, like having to look at jobs that I need to do in the future where normally we'd only do with them like a couple of days before. So there has been quite a lot of like challenges, but I think like I've learned and I've grown like a lot more than I would have just normally in my placement. So I think you have to look at the positive sides of it.
I mean, being on placement is outside your comfort zone, but your circle of your comfort zone has been even wider, hasn't it? But those skills will be more developed and a wider set of skills. We've had a question come through, a live question, and the question is, I'm actually a design management student, but I have a huge interest in fashion as well. How difficult would it be to find a job in fashion marketing and management, given that I do not have any prior formal knowledge in that industry? I thought, Paul, that might be a good one for you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, good question. for me, I think we might touch on this later, but for me, it's as much about attitude and desire and ambition as it is background, particularly at an early stage in your career. So certainly when we employed people into the industry, entry-level graduates, we looked more for their passion, their enthusiasm, of course, their knowledge of the brand or the market, which you can research. But if you had a fashion management degree, a marketing degree, I think it helps, but I don't think it would hinder if you didn't, if I'm honest. I think it's more you as a person and your desire and the way you come across an interview makes a bigger difference. So I think if you've got that passion, I think it sounds like you do, that will carry you a long way, I think. But do your research, I think, on a brand, on the market, that will help.
Yeah, good advice. Okay, and Bethany, here's a question for you. What are the most important skills for someone to have if they want to join an organisation or in the fashion industry?
So I would say similar to what Paul was just saying about just being enthusiastic and kind of just putting yourself out there in the first place. But generally in my role, it's just a lot of Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign. They are the most important skills that you can have right now. Obviously, that will change in the next 10 years. So I would also say being a self-starter and kind of learning, teaching yourself and not waiting for someone else to teach you. So when I was at uni, I taught myself Illustrator over the summer, and we did have like lessons about Illustrator, but I was able to use those to build on my skills rather than learn from scratch, which is so difficult in a class of 20. So I'd really recommend just kind of taking it upon yourself and doing that for yourself if you want to go into commercial high street design. Because those are the skills that have helped me so much.
Okay, my next question was going to be to you: what tools or software do you need to develop?
Yeah.
But I think you've answered. It's really important to talk about those hard skills as well as motivations, isn't it? About not just will you do the job, but can you do the job as well? Those technical skills. Okay, so we've got a question for Paul, and it's. And perhaps Delia might want to answer this one as well afterwards. But does your career differ than how you anticipated? Does your career differ than how you anticipated it would be, or how it would have turned out?
Mine certainly did, because I started off in merchandising, as I mentioned at the beginning, which is. I say less of a creative role. I mean, less of a creative role than a designer, maybe, and slightly less than a buyer. But it's more the management of the money and the numbers and behind the range, the commercials of the range, the important kind of businessy side, if you like. And that's where I thought my career would take me. And actually, halfway through my career, I switched across to buying, which is quite an unusual switch because you tend to stay in that kind of track often. So for me, it took me in a direction that I didn't expect, and actually a hugely rewarding direction. It gave me a much broader spectrum of running a fashion range to see the creative side more and understand the commercial side. So I think it's nice to have a career plan, but likewise, sometimes it takes you the way it wants to take you. The opportunities will come up and you don't quite expect to be there, but that's part of the journey. So yes, keep open-minded, I think.
Yeah, and Delia, you talked about always wanting to be a designer, and that happened to you. Are you surprised that you ended up in higher education, in teaching?
No, that wasn't a surprise actually, but it's really interesting because I always wanted to be a designer, but I actually, when I was about 9 or 10, I wanted to be a midwife. So actually, I got to about 18, and I was thinking, okay, it's like art school or like nursing school, and I don't even know why I really thought about it actually, because I don't think I really ever had a choice. And then I thought, or should I do textiles, or and I think at that point I was just thinking, oh, I know how competitive fashion is, and I know it's going to be a tough career to get into, and should I have a plan B, and all of those things I kind of thought about, which I'm sure lots and lots of students think about. And I think it was such a strong urge. I just couldn't. I couldn't do anything else in a way.
It was a calling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit poncy actually to say it's a calling, but it was literally. I don't know. There was nothing else I could have. I wanted to do and would have done. And I just actually feel that I'm not sure I actually really had a plan. I think because when I left university, and probably similar to Paul, like there wasn't an internet, there wasn't, we didn't have computers. I don't know if I really thought about what the future could look like. I just knew what I wanted to do. And I think I just feel that I've just been so fortunate. And I think a lot of that is, what Paul and Bethany were saying, which is about your attitude. And I think, I used to interview people, and I think part of it is, can you sit in a room with this person every day and not want to kill them? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't know if Paul will agree, but it's quite a big part of it. Like you want to work with people that you want to be with, and that are keen and eager and want to go over and above. And I think even from my first job, I would look around at sort of 5:15 and everyone had gone. And I used to think, it just wasn't ever the way I wanted to work. I never wanted to work like that. So I just wanted to, learn from people who had, they seemed so old. They were probably about 30, but, they seemed really old at that point. But just learn from them and just be really, be part of the business and and just learn and learn and learn. And so, yeah, I just think I've been so fortunate, and it's been better than I expected, I think. And then, again, coming into to education late I think it was something I always thought I would do, or I would like I like the idea of it. But I didn't have a plan, and I was just incredibly fortunate that I ended up in Winchester. And I just thought, okay, I've got to work at the art school. I can't work anywhere else if I'm going to be in Winchester. So I just sort of made it my mission to work at the art school, and was really fortunate. So
we've talked about the past in our old analog lives, and how that involved lots of travel to, I don't know, measure someone up or something like that, or try something. And we couldn't have foreseen the changes in technology, for example, what we're doing today, and I'm sure in the fashion industry with all the digital technology. And we certainly couldn't have foreseen the past year. What do you think of and we've had to change, the industry's had to change and adapt incrementally to technology, but what do you think, given this past year and the pandemic, the most critical changes the industry must make to face the future effectively? Delia, if we can stick with you for that question.
Sure. I mean, a little bit to echo what Bethany was saying, but those computer skills are really important. And I know that increasingly, you're doing kind of technical packs, you're doing your design work, you're doing all of that, and that's all being done on the computer. Whereas I think, when I started, it was you literally were drawing on paper with pencil, and you worked like that, and you would you would email it or send it off to China or the factory or whoever, and you get the sample back. And I think everything is quicker now because of technology, because I know that at M&S, because I've still got friends there, so you do your spec pack, it's all online, it's all sort of, everyone feeds into that, I think, which I thought was really, really interesting, and it's instantly at the factory and they can feed into it. And so I think from a sustainability point of view, because my kind of area is sustainability, and I think that this idea that you can work online, you can see what a sample looks like on a computer program without actually having to make it. So you're saving resources, and you're saving material, and you're saving on waste. And I think all of those things are really, really important. And I think that technology is obviously, it's incredibly important, but I think I still think we need to look at it as a tool. It's something that helps us with our work. It doesn't replace drawing or sketching or a sketchbook or things like that. It doesn't kind of completely replace it, but I think to have those skills and to be able to work with those programs, it just makes things easier in a certain way. So I think I think as long as technology doesn't take over, because I think sometimes that it can become a little bit flat and sort of two-dimensional. It's all about the screen. I think actually when you work in design, when you work in fashion, you touching things and you want to feel textures, and I think texture and protection and warmth and all those things, and I think they've all become so important because obviously we're all in our sweatshirts, and it's just it's changed things. But
I think as I'm listening to you, I'm kind of picturing you in Saint-Tropez, kind of having all these experiences, but in the way that it would develop your personality and the way you communicate, where if you spend your whole career behind a screen, you don't have all those culturally expanding experiences.
Absolutely.
And, let's face it, glamorous experiences. The culture of the industry could change. Yeah.
But it's about communication, because and that's what I like about being at the art school, because it's a very international kind of cohort. That you go to different countries and they have different ways of working, different cultures, and you get used to, it's February, okay, so nothing will happen in China for a month because it's it's Chinese New Year, or that in August all the print companies in Europe, they all close for August, so you just get to know all of that, and so it's a wonderful sort of education. But obviously it's experiential, you're learning that stuff, and you're learning how to communicate with people, because, again, as these two guys will say, it will agree with, I'm sure, but it's about communication, how you communicate your design, whether it's in writing or in a drawing or by talking, it's all about communication. That's so important, and collaboration. Those are kind of two of the most important things, the most important skills you can have, I think.
That's really, really useful information. And we've got a question here. I'm thinking of doing a placement for next year, and I'm starting to look, but wondered what is the best time to do this. And I also wondered if there's any tips on how to stand out when applying for them. Eva, I thought that might be a nice one for you.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, just to start, if placement year, you make your pros and cons list. If it's for you, definitely do it. It's literally the best thing that I've ever done. I feel so much more confident coming back into third year. So take a pros and cons list and look into it, but definitely try do one if you can. But applying wise, I know a lot of applications actually shut before Christmas if you're applying for that September. However, bit of a funny story actually. I actually applied for mine before Christmas and got declined. But I messaged our HR and networked through that. That's how I ended up getting my job. And that was all about this time last year. So you've still got plenty of time. I live with two girls that are doing their placement years at L'Oreal, and they didn't have their interviews until April time, and they ended up getting it in June. So just try, I would just say ASAP from now, try start applying, but I wouldn't get too worried. And even if you're getting declining emails at the start, keep going, because the next one you apply to could be the internship that you actually get and a company that you really fit in with. And for standing out, I just think really research into the industry in general and the company you're applying for. Obviously I knew Bottega was part of Kering, and I love luxury as a sector anyway, so obviously I had quite a lot of knowledge on that, but I think just grow your knowledge before your interview, because even though you're learning more, you'll just feel so much more confident for any questions get past you. So yeah, that's
great. Such a valuable insight from someone who's trodden that path already. I've got another question for Paul actually. I am a fashion and textiles design student, but have an interest in fashion buying. What would you suggest is the best way to transition to the more business side of the industry?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I'm assuming you're studying at the moment. We have actually on MA, coincidentally, we have quite a lot. Probably about half of our cohort this year are designers, are design students who've studied at UG textile design, and have now decided to spend a year with us on the fashion management side. So this isn't a sales pitch at all. I'm not saying this, but actually that's quite a good way, as in to do an extra year, whether it's at Southampton or elsewhere. It's a good way to spend a year of your time just to give you a more detailed insight into the management side of the business. And I think that would stand you in good stead in terms of employment. Again, I think, as I said before, I think having a passion for fashion and an interest in it will get you a long way. So whether you're a designer wanting to go into buying or vice versa, I don't think it's a huge issue, if I'm honest, when you're quite young in your career. So that enthusiasm, that knowledge, as the guys are saying, that do your research, understand the brand, that will make the difference. So I wouldn't, again, let that put you off so much. And we have designers who've come across to fashion management are already saying, I want to stay in management now. So, and that's fine. You know, that breadth of experience is great. I mean, my wife, for example, is she started off as a designer and then studied design at UG, and then became a buyer for most of her career. So it's a nice path. It gives you a broader perspective to understand the buying process in detail, and then to help manage it is a fantastic skill set. So attitude, again, I think a good attitude will get you a long way.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from this discussion, that motivation and communicating motivation, and I suppose I was thinking, yeah, attitude. I mean, I suppose each industry has its own culture, and that kind of attitude and communicating that motivation seems really important. For
sure, it is. I think I don't really like the word resilient because it's used quite a lot sometimes out of context, but I think to be motivated helps you to be resilient, because you're faced with lots of I'm sure the guys, Eva, Bethany will tell you this, and Delia, every day throws up new challenges in fashion. You walk into the office expecting to do something, and chances are you probably won't even get to it, because your email box will be full of stuff, your boss will be talking about something, there'll be a customer issue, there'll be a supply issue, all sorts. So being resilient to that and flexible will get you a long way. So a positive attitude carries you a long way through that, because you'll have good days and bad days, you'll have ups and downs, but overall, if you can keep going and see the end goal, that will carry you through for sure. And I think, as Eva mentioned, or Bethany, sorry, as well, seeing your finished product in store or on a model or in a magazine, that's hugely rewarding. I can imagine, particularly for a designer who's actually created that. So it's those good days that help for sure.
Okay, fantastic. We've got a question about networking. I know that must have changed a lot recently, but how do you find opportunities, and do you have any tips on connecting with people in the industry? Bethany?
So I would say, being on a graduate scheme, they kind of set up a lot of opportunities for us to network. So I guess that wasn't quite as organic, but I've been exposed to so many different people across the business, which has been amazing. And also I would say, just, I don't know, being like helpful and useful and likable, getting to chat to everyone is the best thing that you can do, rather than purposely trying to network. Just, you know, being a helpful person to have around. And I would say, like, during my internship, I did an internship between second and third year at M&S, and I wasn't purposely trying to network or to get opportunities out of it. I didn't expect it to turn into a job, but, you know, I just did my best, and it ended up becoming that way. And also things like I ended up getting a yarn sponsorship through working with suppliers and working, and my manager, she had someone that she knew, she wanted to help me because she liked me, and, you know, it just happens that way, kind of. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever purposely tried to network, but I have a really good network just from, you know, chatting to people and being nice to everyone you meet.
Yeah. Well, I think at the career service we would say that is networking, kind of going into your internship, making a brilliant impression, making sure everybody knows that, you know, you can do the job, you will do the job, and then applying for the graduate scheme, you've networked already, haven't you? Bethany, I've got another question for you. What would you tell your student self if you could go back in time?
Just to be a little bit more confident about my own abilities, and I think being at WSA, I felt a little bit like I'd often be told that my work was quite commercial, which is sometimes a bad word at art school. You know, it kind of made me feel like I wasn't, you know, as creative. But honestly, I've always wanted to work in high street. I've always wanted to work for a big brand. And being commercial is the best thing that you can be. Obviously, it might not get you the highest marks at uni, but I would say that if you do want to go into that sort of career path, then it's amazing to be commercial and to create that work for your portfolio and to show that you can design for someone who isn't yourself. And I would just like to be a little bit more kind of confident about those skills in myself. And
I mean, I just think that if you know your own career values, as Delia did, and you kind of have that vision, you make it happen, that's, you know, being positive and you're going down the path that you want to go down. And we call it career values. What's important to you, what's not important to you, what's the deal breaker, you know, you kind of, you know yourself, it's important. Okay, we've got a question for Delia. You mentioned sustainability earlier, and the question is, post-pandemic, will sustainability in fashion be more important? Post-pandemic, a little bit of a double question. Post-pandemic, will affordability in fashion be more important, and how do these two coexist?
Okay, sustainability is a big concept. It's a big issue, and you know, I could talk about it until about tomorrow probably. I'm sure Paul knows already, but I think that from a I don't think sustainability could be any more important. I think it's the most important thing that is happening at the moment, the most important issue. I think we don't have a choice. We absolutely don't have a choice. We have to be more sustainable, because we'll literally die if not. I mean, I think it is life and death. And I think that the pandemic has, well, a bit like I mentioned before, I think it's changed the way we work. And I think that from a point of view of, you know, because obviously as tutors, as you know, as program leaders as well, and Paul, I'm sure Paul will have a similar situation, but you know, we had to react really quickly to what was happening so that we could engage with our students, and we had to change things. And you know, a bit like Eva was saying earlier, it's actually a lot of things that came out of that I found really positive. Like I won't ever go back to running the program as it was pre-COVID, because actually so many of the things that I've kind of introduced or changed, or, you know, I feel like actually it was surprisingly positive. It was, you know, it was amazing that actually you can assess students or you can work with students when actually you're not in the same room. And so all of those things were really positive. And I think that you can use that technology to save resources. And so, for example, you know, with the cohort that I've got at the moment, because obviously at the moment we are online, I'm asking them to work in half scale, which means that, you know, they might be working in a small space, they might be in their bedroom, you know, you can't assume where anybody is. And so they can work on a smaller scale. The design is exactly the same. You know, you're doing the same amount of design work, but you're using less paper, you know, less material. You're not making lots of things. We're not asking them to have a sewing machine. You know, we're saying use paper, use glue. You know, you can be really creative and you can still design in a really meaningful way. And so I think that there isn't, I personally think there's nothing more important than sustainability, and it's not just about fashion, it's about every single industry. And I think that, so, and again, you know, obviously Bethany's at M&S, they have Plan A, which is brilliant, and the way they run that I think is really fantastic. It's really, really, you know, they really mean it. I mean, I worked at M&S, and what I really liked was, you know, it was all about quality and it was all about sustainability. It's all about this stuff. But actually, when you work inside the brand, they really mean it. It's not just, you know, talk. So I think all of those things are really important. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people think fashion is kind of a, you know, a silly industry. It's a bit like, you know, a bit sort of feminine and silly and, you know, whatever. But actually, we all wear clothes, and it's a $1 billion industry, and it's global. So I think, yeah, we have to wake up and, you know.
So part of the question was, will affordability in fashion be more important?
Sorry, I was rambling.
Yeah, no, you weren't rambling. We're all completely glued because we can see your passion for that particular, that particular. I can't even call it a subject. It's a necessity, isn't it? I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
And how is that going to work in terms of affordability being a much bigger issue post-COVID?
It's that is where it becomes very, very difficult, I think, and you know, I do talk a lot about sort of privilege, and you know, we are so privileged, you know, all of us here, we're on our computers and we're at universities, and we're so privileged, you know, we have so much privilege and we're so lucky. And I think that it's very difficult to say that, you know, you can't make a blanket statement, you know, a £4 t-shirt is evil. You can't say that, because in fact there will be lots of people that, I mean, that's all they can afford. And who are we to judge anybody, you know, for making choices because they're cheap? We all do it. And I think that it's a big sort of dichotomy, is that to make things well and to pay people properly and to have, you know, decent industry, things will be more expensive, but we can't afford that. So what are we going to do about it? So I think that's kind of the biggest challenge, really. It's the fact that we have to have an industry, we have to have consumption, and we have to have, you know, obviously it's all about money, it's about economics. So we have to generate money somehow, but it's just how are there other methods? But I think we can't, with a good conscience, say, you know, I'm sorry, but no one can have a t-shirt that costs £1, because what are those people who can?
Sure, it makes me kind of think about the high fashion designers who are very sustainable, and their products are very expensive, and they kind of talk about.
Are they sustainable though? How do you know they're sustainable?
Well, I suppose they market them as very expensive, and they kind of have a big sustainability marketing aspect to what they do. And then I kind of think, well, the people that buy those things are probably the people who buy quite a lot of stuff as well, you know.
I mean, I think that obviously things that are made, for example, you know, more bespoke or handmade, those things, that I think that is the definition of, or one of the definitions of luxury, I think. And the fact is that, you know, you can use beautiful fabrics, and, you know, it takes a lot longer to make something. And if you think about, you know, 200 years ago, that's how everything was made.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was made like that. But I think that people just, there was, you know, an understanding of the value of materials, whereas I think now we're so far removed from the real value of everything. So I think that, you know, the fact that you can buy a t-shirt for £2, I know I keep using that example, but it's just, you know, one example. It's like cheaper than a sandwich. So that product is basically telling us it has little value, and so it's a difficult one. And I think the other thing is that, you know, I've got friends in industries, you know, still high and low, and actually the high street brands, they don't have an unsustainability, like, you know, plan. It's like they have sustainability plans. You know, they want to be sustainable. Their agenda is not, you know, it is to be sustainable. And I think everyone's just sort of doing what they can, but I think the government need to be involved. I think corporations.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
yeah. So there needs to be some kind of regulation and legislation. Yeah.
I think you want to sell a t-shirt for £2, great. Okay, we'll pay more tax then, or, you know, I think that there should be sort of balances in a way.
Yeah. Okay. That's really, really interesting. And I've got another interesting question for Paul about the industry. And it's with the rise of online shopping and multi-channel experiences and the ability to code, analyze data and reveal trends, buying habits in particular, will this offer more opportunity for fashion marketing and branding and those looking to enter this world?
Yes, I think in short answer, I think one good thing about fashion is it's in a constant state of change. A, because it's fashion by nature and fashion changes, but I think B, technology is then driving speed of change behind the scenes, so in supply chains and head office roles. So I think things like big data, AI, I think are currently changing and will change drastically the roles in fashion in some roles. So, for example, for good and bad, I think, for example, the role of the merchandiser, is a numbers-driven role. Those guys spend a lot of time on calculators and computers doing the maths and making sure things are on track, etc. And that will still exist, I'm sure, but AI will replace or certainly enable a lot deeper thought and thinking. Computers can do a lot of this stuff in the same way our brains can, and that should, I think, not get rid of certain roles. I think it'll enhance them. I think the role of the merchandiser, for example, will change. There'll be a richer role. It won't just be a number crunching, and it isn't just, to be fair, but a lot of time is spent number crunching and doing spreadsheets and stuff. And I think that will be taken away and enable those people to do something more than just spend a lot of time doing the data. So I know some of the big tech brands are getting into fashion. AI is running a lot of the show behind the scenes, but with a lot of people still watching, humans are watching, because AI is only so good, if you like, and humans actually have a wider skill, a deeper skill. I think in terms of understanding the customer, which is something we always try and strive to do, and as customers, we're very fickle. One day we'll think something, the next day we'll think something else. Trying to keep up with that as a designer or as a buyer or as a merchandiser or whatever, trend forecaster, is hugely difficult because we, as customers, and we sit on both sides of the fence. As customers, we sometimes don't even know ourselves. Our changes are influenced by many things. And I think tech will help understand that, data mining, understanding all that good stuff to a degree. And I think it's only as good as it is. I think we still need that human intuition, that human oversight to make it real. But yeah, I think it will enhance a lot of jobs as opposed to hopefully replace a lot, which I know is a fear with AI in many industries. So
well, thank you. That gives us a really good insight. I've got a last question. We're running out of time now, and could I ask Delia, do you think that more students might opt to do an MA, thinking the industry might be in a much better place next year, and do you think that's a good idea?
I suppose I would echo a little bit what Paul was saying earlier, which is that I suppose it depends what you want to do. I think that if you feel like, okay, I just want to get out and work and be creative and all the rest of it, then do that. But I think that there is value in an MA, definitely. I think that it's a good thing to, and I know that, again, Eva and Bethany maybe agree, is that if you go out of education and work maybe, and then you go back into education, and actually, so I did my MA after I'd been working for quite a long time. And so I went back into it thinking, okay, I really want this. I really want to be challenged, and, because it is a different kind of education, and I want to sort of really explore my creativity. And, when you're working for other people, you're not, if you have your own brand, you can do what you want. But again, it's all about the customer, of course, as Paul says. If people don't buy what you're making, then you're an artist, not a fashion designer. So I think that, you do have constraints. And one of the nice things about being a university is, and something I tell my students is, you've got a year, be ambitious, be creative, go slightly mad. I don't mean mad as in make things that can't be worn, because that actually quite annoys me. And I'm probably a bit more like Bethany. I think I kind of always had slightly more of a commercial eye as well, I think. But I think just if you want to sort of dig deeper into the subject, if you want to, we talk about becoming a master of the subject, and I think there's value in that. Absolutely, yeah. And
Paul, do you think it might be a good strategy to kind of increase employability via an MA, increase skills, increase knowledge, become more qualified, and kind of bide the time for the job market to recover?
Yeah, I think so. It's a good question. I've been speaking this week actually to a couple of undergraduates at Winchester, and they're saying, you know, Paul, do you think you should do an MA? And I think genuinely, I think the job market is quite challenging across many industries at the moment, of course, for obvious reasons, and that will be short term. So I wouldn't panic too much about that. But doing an MA will buy you time in terms of re-entering the market at a better time. But not just that. I think, as we said earlier, I think it's nice, and think things like the marketing programs and management programs are actually quite beneficial for students from other backgrounds to enhance their knowledge, and vice versa, you know, to do something different. So I think sort of two things. One, it will buy you a bit of time. It will make you more qualified, and it will probably, if you choose the right MA, hopefully make you more employable by stretching into a related topic or subject, but maybe possibly not just going straight up the ladder, if you like. You know, use it to expand your knowledge, and I think you'll come up the other side more employable for sure. And it's only a year, and I know sometimes when you're in your early 20s, a year can seem a long time, but it goes quick, so it will buy you time, I think. And I think the market will come back, so I wouldn't panic too much at this point. You know, give it some time. You know, we'll be back in a good place, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and the data is actually that as a whole, those who do postgrad earn more over their lifetime, although you know, it's not a lot, it's a little bit more. So there are some advantages.
It all helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you will earn more over your lifetime if you do go into postgraduate study. Can I just, we're running out of time. I just want to say a huge thank you to you all for taking time to support fashion students across undergrad and postgrad today. We've had a really wide sign up and really good attendance. And it's been a really valuable insight and kind of some really nice goosebump moments of, you know, talking about really exciting things from you all at really different points in your career. So it's a really nice spread. So thank you. And Eva, really good luck with your placement. Mm-hmm. And Bethany, good luck with your career in your graduate scheme. So a huge thank you.
Thank you. I mean, that was really enjoyable. I think we're all saying similar things, aren't we? That it's about attitude, and it's about your personality, and it's about ability. It's about your willingness to work. And I think what Eva and Bethany are saying is, you know, they're kind of right in the middle of it right now. I think that's, you know, it's quite nice to hear that you're saying similar things to Paul and I, and we're kind of at the other, you know, we're at the other end. But actually, these things are, you know, they're valuable throughout your whole career. And I think that's the willingness to stretch yourself, and, you know, I think as Bethany was saying, sort of talk to other people and make yourself sort of available. And, you know, those are the people that you remember when you look back on people you've worked with. Those are the people that you remember, and I think that's a skill as well. So, but yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.